Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Cindy Edison. She is the conscious channel for Josef, a collective consciousness of teachers, the evolved vibration of Seth and Abraham, and the vibration of New Earth. Her work involves teaching the evolution of the human aspect through the third dimension into the fourth and fifth dimensions, which is what we'll be talking about today. Cindy, welcome to the program.
Yeah. Hey, John. Nice to be here. Thanks for having us. The collective us. How are you?
The collective us. Okay, good. We're going to have some questions about that. And speaking of which, who is Josef and what do they teach and why are they doing this now?
Josef is a collective consciousness of teachers, and they are the evolved consciousness, the evolved vibration of Seth and Abraham, which means that they are ever evolving message that began with Seth about creating our own reality. So we have not joined forces, we've joined that consciousness. We are that consciousness. And so we are moving ahead. Josef represents the vibration of the new earth, which is the realm of consciousness where there is no fear, which is why we are teaching now, because that's where we're moving.
I think a lot of people would like that, right?
Yeah, that's where we're going.
Sounds great. Who are Seth and Abraham?
I imagine most of your listeners will know who they are. Seth was channeled by Jane Roberts. She started back in the 70s, and Seth came through. Jane went into a trance-like channel. Jane was a trance channel, which means she was unaware. And Seth's main message at that time, if you can call it a main message, was that we create our own reality. So then Esther Hicks comes along with the collective consciousness of Abraham, and Seth is a part of that consciousness. As the consciousness expands, so does everything within it. So it's the evolution, it's the evolution of that message. So Abraham began teaching about vibration, and get happy is their main message, and how to manifest. We take it a step further in moving toward the new earth, and that is by shifting our perspective of our reality and creating our reality in a conscious way, choosing a vibration, because vibration is really the foundation of our message, because vibration is the foundation of everything. We live in a vibrationally based universe. The universal laws are vibrational. So that's where we're heading.
Okay.
I've gotten some flack, not as much as I thought, about saying that Josef is the evolved consciousness, but Josef decided to do that to example our own consciousness, our own evolution, and that everything evolves. So they wanted us to be aware of our soul. My soul is part of the collective of Josef as a teacher. So we are exempling the evolution of humanity, really, vibrational evolution.
Okay. When you mention New Earth, that reminds me of what a lot of people are talking about when they use the term ascension.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing? Is it aligned with it? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, ascension is the pathway to get there. When people say we are ascending, that means we are, in our terms, we are expanding our understanding of who we really are. And as we do that, we expand our physical vibration. The physical aspect that we are the human physical aspect of our soul. And so this aspect, we are here to expand this particular aspect. Every time an aspect of the soul expands, the entire Godhead expands, right? So yes, ascension is the pathway of evolution. It is the pathway to the new earth realm of consciousness. Yeah.
Okay. Now this path that you're on now, how did you stumble across this, or how did you discover channeling in the first place?
Well, looking back, when I started channeling, I had always been guided and led to channelers. When I was in my early 20s, my friends were saying, come and see this person. I thought it was weird, but I was always very curious about it, but not to the point where I would try to go find them on my own. Long story short, I was in advertising for 35 years. I sat down to write an article one evening on my laptop. And as I was thinking about my headline, all of a sudden I started typing. And it started with Dear Cindy. And it was odd, but I was very curious. And it went on for 7 pages. So that's how it started for me. And then the next several years, I was asking a lot of questions. Who are you? What are you doing? What's going on? But always from curiosity. I was very curious. It was a loving, loving exchange. Yeah, beautiful.
That sounds like you were a scribe for spirit, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is. Okay, right.
Yeah.
I have heard that before. There was a woman named Gates McKibben who wrote entire books in that very fashion, which I thought was pretty amazing.
There are millions who are doing this, millions who are channeling. We're all channels, first of all.
Now, if we're all channels, these intuitive gifts that you have, which I think are a little bit more evolved than the common person, the common man, have you had any other intuitive experiences, seeing spirits and anything that has to do with crossing the veil or another dimension?
I feel things. I don't see. I haven't yet. I expect to at some point, but I feel the vibrations of them. And I pretty much always have. I can tell when I'm being guided strongly. If I'm not supposed to go a certain way, I can feel it. It's almost like a push, but I don't see anything. I hear things. I get blocks of thought. I have full-blown conversations. Our books are channeled, and that was an exchange in conversation, much like most channels. I don't believe that any human is more evolved in their channeling. I'm not more evolved in channeling than you are. I'm just more aware of it at this point than you are, because everything is vibrational, and channeling is vibrational language. Vibration is the language of the universe, and it is our most natural language that is inherent in all of us. When you see something, when you open your eyes and you look at anything, if you see, you are translating a vibration. Everything is created in its non-physical form first. Our physical experience of it is channeling. We'll change that word eventually, because channeling has it's thought of, like you said, that it is an intuitive gift, but we all do it. When you hear things, our 5 physical senses are physically bringing into our experience a non-physical vibration. So we will change. It's a translation of vibration. That's all it is.
Okay. There seems to be different types of channeling. Conscious channeling, what exactly is that? Is conscious channeling what you do within a group, or is that what everyone does anyway?
Well, that's what everybody does. And that's what we are exempling. I'm channeling right now. And conscious channeling only means that my vibration, my connection to Josef, my connection to my soul, like your connection to your soul, and every single person who's listening has the connection. It's only their awareness of it will activate it, if you want to call it that. But conscious channeling is a blended vibration. It's an awareness of more of who you really are. That's all it is. It's a consciously blended vibration. Our physical vibration, all physical aspects, we all have a physical vibration. And the physical vibration is what we have accumulated throughout our entire evolution through the 3rd dimension. And we have been here through eons of time, many, many different timelines, evolving every lifetime experience, every physical lifetime experience. We evolve by way of our soul vibration. So this jump into what will be the 4th dimension. A lot of people don't talk about that, but we will enter the 4th dimension before we move into the 5th. And that is a manifestation of the shift in our perspective. And that's what moves us. That's what moves our aspect forward. And that's acknowledging and expanding our awareness of more of who we are, which is our soul.
What are the main differences between, the third, the fourth, and the fifth dimensions? Does it have a lot to do with shifting towards service to others as opposed to service to self? Or is that just one aspect of it?
It's one aspect, but it's not, it really, now go with me on this. It really has nothing to do with anyone but you. Because I'll tell you this, the third dimension is a dimension of contrast, where there are contrasting vibrational timelines. There are contrasting vibrations. We experience those contrasting vibrations by way of our thoughts. Our thoughts are vibrations. And when we choose a thought that is in contrast to who we really are, we are choosing to create from an out of alignment position. And that's why we have the chaos. That's why our lives are messed up, as we would call it, or, that we have heartache and suffer and all of these things. We experience those things because what we are choosing, and we are solely responsible for our own vibration. But when we are choosing thoughts that feel bad, negative emotion is a gift, actually, from our ego aspect, because our ego aspect is of love, which is a whole nother perspective shift. But the ego offers the negative emotion so we can understand that we are choosing out of alignment manifestations. Ultimately, when you start to feel negative emotion, that is a warning sign from your ego saying, choose again, choose again, choose again. You are not going to like this if you keep choosing, because the more you focus on it, the more it expands, right? So remove the words, so many people say, and we understand, of course, you're choosing between love and fear. And basically, yes, that's what it is. But we say, shift your perspective, get fear out of the mix, and just understand that you are choosing to create your experience either from an in alignment position, which is in alignment with your vibration of your soul, or an out of alignment position, which is the contrasting vibration of the third dimension. That's what we're moving through. Third dimension, we are evolving through it.
But doesn't that have to do with what you just described? Is that duality, and we're moving eventually away from that? Is that the idea?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of different names for it, duality, the yin and the yang, and the good and the evil. It's all the same. We like to, because we don't talk about fear, because fear is a human construct. It's a word. I mean, if I say to you, just the word fear is fearful, and everything that is not love is under the umbrella of fear. So we say there are two umbrellas from which to choose, that every experience is created from. One umbrella contains all of the vibrations that are in alignment with your soul, which is love and peace and joy and all of that stuff. That's your eternal pathway. That's your natural eternal pathway. That's who you really are. The other umbrella to choose from is out of alignment, which means it's out of alignment with who you really are, which means all of those vibrations that are up for grabs, just like everything, are out of alignment with who we really are, and they manifest in that way too.
Does that have to do with having free will?
Of course. Yes. Yes.
Okay. You mentioned timelines before. That kind of, whenever someone talks about timelines, inevitably that shifts to a discussion of past lives and those type of things. Have you experienced anything like that?
Yes. I love it. Actually, Josef took me through a meditation. I was trying to clear something in me that I'd been carrying my whole life, many lifetimes, as it turns out, many lifetimes, a vibration, because we don't necessarily vote for healing. We don't think there's anything that needs to be healed necessarily. We just want to change the story because it's all vibrational at its core. So I was trying to fix something. It had to do with my father. You know, we all have that stuff, right? My father in this lifetime. And so I finally got to the end of my rope and the third dimensional stuff. And I said to Joseph in a meditation, please take me back to where it started. And they did. And it was an amazing experience that ended up in book 2. And what happened was, I'll just make it short. What happened was I was taken to a timeline, the timeline where this vibration was activated. And I've been carrying that vibration in my physical aspect ever since that happened, which was, I don't know what the year was. I know what the visual was that they gave me. Doesn't really matter. It only matters that it's still active in my physical vibrational makeup today.
Do you think that some people might be kind of curious how long ago approximately that would have been? Was it 10 years ago? Was it 100? Was it 1,000? Any clue?
I'll tell you what the visual was. And of course, you know, I'll tell you anything you want to hear, but I'm going to say to you that it doesn't really matter when it was for your listeners. This is another shift we need to make because everything vibrational is not on our clock time. It has nothing to do with years, how old we are, when it was, because we're talking about vibration and everything that we experience that is on our eternal pathway is event driven. Those events are vibrational agreements of understanding. That's how we evolve. When we understand one thing, we move to the next spot, you know? So we move based on our awareness. So it doesn't really matter. I'll tell you what it was, but the visual that I had was of a very confined, it was a small shack. It was 3 sides. It was like a play set. It was like on a stage. And it was a very old cabin. There was 1 table and 1 chair in there, broken up, wooden. I don't know what it was supposed to be. I didn't ask. It didn't matter, you know, but that's all that was in this cabin. And I was a young woman laying on the floor in the fetal position, and I was being beaten by this man who turned out to be my father in this lifetime, but he was my husband in that lifetime. What happened was it was pretty deep. And as I was watching this scene, I was the observer, and you have a certain knowing when you're watching these things. It was really interesting. And I was standing there watching, and Archangel Michael was the one who took me there. And I looked up at him at one point and I said, I'm ready. I don't want to see any more of this. I want to go. And as I started to turn, he turned me back around and said, we must change the ending to this before we leave. And as I turned around and looked back at the cabin, the scene was different. And now it was a scene of, I'm getting covered with goosebumps. I haven't talked about this much. It was a scene in the same cabin. And my husband, we were very young. I would say we were probably 20. If that, he was sitting at the table and he had his head in his hands and he was crying, and I was comforting him. I was behind him, comforting him. So what we did was, and Michael said, now we have changed the ending to that experience in that lifetime from an out of alignment position to an in alignment position. It went from, in our words, fear to love, right? So now I was loving him instead of fearing him. And he made me understand at that point too, that not only was I healed, we'll say evolved, but I healed that vibration by moving it forward out of that time frame, out of that timeline where there was no more vibrational agreement for me. So at that point, that aspect of me shifted. So, and it shifted for not only me, but for him as well, even though he's been dead for 40 years. So it's a vibrational experience that really expands your awareness of who you really are, because you're now participating in more of who you really are, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The reason I bring that up about when it was is because in discussions about 3D, 5D, and, you know, how we get there, often what does come up in the discussion is we were there thousands of years ago. So There are some people that I have talked with that say they remember as far back as, say, like Atlantis, for instance. And we were in a 5D civilization, but things changed. There was a consciousness shift, speaking of which. And instead of being all about group consciousness and love, the avarice and the materialism took over, and then the consciousness pretty much fell off the cliff. That's the only reason I ask. I mean, do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I will say that every time we experience a new timeline, whether it's in the third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, or all of the dimensions that we have experienced prior to the third, and there are unlimited, we're an aspect. We don't die, we're an aspect, we're energy, we're vibration. So anytime we experience that, the vibration that we experience is in vibrational agreement with that vibrational timeline. So we can visit any timeline. You can visit any timeline you choose. It doesn't matter when it is, because again, this is event-driven evolution. That's why when I first started, I did some mediumship work. It fell out of the sky. It just started doing it one day, and I was doing it for friends and some family just because it's a very healing experience. But once you understand that the connection that we have to other time frames and that it's a vibrational connection, you can connect to any place, any vibration. There's no real place. They're just vibrational timelines.
Good point. This is what I want to ask. You say that we can connect to any time frame, any timeline rather. Does that mean I can step into either, is it a past life memory, or am I literally stepping back into time, going back to 1985, for instance? You're saying that timeline does exist. It's not just a memory.
Well, you're in the 1985 timeline right now. And it is a memory because your memory, if you want to call it that, it's, from the fifth dimensional, sometimes the words are hard because they don't really fit. But what you're really accessing is a vibration that's active within your physical vibration. Our physical vibration is made up of beliefs, experiences, understandings that we have accumulated and picked up and accommodated through every single lifetime that we've been here in the third dimension. So all of those vibrations, which is why so many people spend so many years in therapy, because they're trying to fix what they think is a problem, but it's actually a vibration. It's a vibration. And acknowledging that, and I say you can visit anywhere you want, you have to be aware that you can do that, first of all. It has to be in your awareness, and you have to believe it, because that's a vibration too.
But it's not as if you can step into a time machine and go back to a year in the past. You can't really do that, can you?
You mean your physical body to go back there? No, it's it's vibrational, but you're vibrational.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No. I mean, I don't know. Some people may believe that, but no, because it's vibrational movement. Timelines are all vibrational. The third dimension is completely vibrational consciousness, as is the entire universe. So, and because we are vibrational beings, which means we are all one, we can connect to anything.
Let's talk about what's happening on the planet now. There's a lot of disruption. There's also a medium explosion, psychics everywhere, people talking about Gen Z and people with heightened intuitive abilities. And we're seeing that more than we've had in a long time. Why do you suppose all this is happening now?
Well, everything that's going on now has to do with the shift in consciousness. Everything. People are becoming more aware of who they are. People are becoming more aware of what's going on. And a lot of that has to do with social media and everything, and technology that is just, you can connect and find out anything you want. Whether it's true or not is another question. It doesn't really matter. But what we are experiencing in the third dimension is the chaos, all the chaos and the everything that's under the control of the chaos. We are actually creating that through our collective choosing. right? So, but we create every experience collectively and individually. Just because all the chaos is going on does not mean you have to participate in it, and we suggest that you don't. But the chaos that's happening is, in our words, manifestations of out of alignment choosing that has just expanded and expanded and expanded through eons of time too. It's been going on since the third dimension is of contrast. So there's always going to be that. So the explosion of teachers, yes, coming out of the woodwork, yes, at this time specifically, because humanity is moving quickly up through the fourth dimension. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there are not millions who are still totally unaware of what's happening. And that's okay, because everybody evolves at their own pace. The Earth's not going anywhere. But we're moving from a physical experience to a vibrational one, which is what we're teaching, how to get there.
Okay, so we've heard about the third dimension, and where we want to be is the fifth dimension. What is the fourth? I think that can be a bit confusing for some folks, myself included.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people don't talk about it. But the way we describe it is, in the third dimension, our physical vibration, okay, the physical makeup of our vibration, five senses, looking, touching, feeling physically. We feel things physically. So our physical vibration has been our dominant creative force through the entire third dimension. So think of your physical vibration as a accumulation of your physical lifetime experiences for eons of time. So let's put that at, most people, I'm going to say this as an example, 90% is going to be contrasting, right? And you've got 10% of the love in there of your soul's vibration. That's actually not true. That is a human perception of that because of the awareness. Okay. So most people are creating from that dominant creative force. Your vibration, your dominant creative vibration is your creative force. So when we are moving through the third dimension, our dominant creative force on the collective level is contrast. So as we begin to move and experience more of who we are and become more aware of who we are, our physical vibration begins to shift. Therefore, our reality, our physical reality shifts to accommodate that shift in vibration. That's what we create from. So as we begin to move toward the fourth dimension and we become more and more aware of the control we have over what we are creating, our physical vibration begins to shift. So let's say we started out at, I don't remember what I said, even 90%. Now we're at, maybe 2 lifetimes ago, we're at 80%. And then the last lifetime, maybe we're at 70%. In this lifetime, we have the conscious awareness that we are in control. We are the only ones that are in control of our own vibration. As soon as we make that shift, 51%, let's say, 51% soul vibration, which means you are now naturally attracting from your soul's vibration, which is pure love. And Josef calls the fourth dimension, it's like the downhill slide, because once you start attracting naturally from that vibration, it expands because that's where your focus is and that's your dominant creative force. And so now we go from 51% to 65% to 78% to 90% very quickly, because now we're creating from a space of love. So the fourth dimension is when we are still in this physical body, but our physical vibration is dominant, is the dominant creative force of our soul. And then the fifth dimension is 100% soul. Make sense?
Yes. Is it a transition of sorts?
It's an expansion of your souls. Yes.
Okay. Now, 3D to 5D ascension and that type of thing often brings up discussions about Earth, how it's very dense and it's a little rough. And some people who channel will even say, well, from who we communicate with, it's very primitive. Why do you suppose life is as difficult as it is here?
Well, because of the choosing. It's all in the choosing. We create, I am moving pretty quickly. I still step off the path, a lot. Sometimes I go through waves, as we all do, but we are so embedded in the third dimension of contrast. If you even think about your beliefs, let's just talk about beliefs for a second. Our beliefs, as Abraham says, are just thoughts you keep on thinking. And so your beliefs that we've accumulated and our teachings, let's look at the beliefs in the Bible that the religions teach. All religions teach these beliefs, right? And people accommodate the Bible, their teaching. They say, this is what the Bible says, so this is what I believe. But they're mostly of fear. Now, we have to understand, too, that all of the teachings that come out of the third dimension are in vibrational agreement with the vibration where they are conjured and taught from, which is why we are suggesting part of our teaching is a shift in your belief system. Our belief system that we are moving toward and the foundation of the new earth vibration is based in the universal laws. So if you take, we give out process, if you take one belief that you have, and let's say, I was raised Catholic, and the Catholic Church teaches that you cannot speak directly to God. You have to go in a little hole, right? You have to speak to the priest and you have to do all this stuff. So that's a belief that a lot of people still have, right? Most people, religions have all these beliefs and fear. So you can't speak to God. So now we get to this point. And in my understanding, I never believed that anyway. I never knew why I didn't believe it, but I didn't believe it. So now I get to this understanding with Joseph, who teaches we are God. In fact, the teachers that are teaching from this consciousness are all teaching the same thing in different language. We are God because we are an aspect. When the Bible said, we have translated the Bible into the fifth dimensional evolved version. When the Bible said that God made man in his image, the fifth dimensional version is, yes, in his vibrational image, in his consciousness, which is pure love.
What that reminds me of is a talk I had with a woman not too long ago about the Nag Hammadi texts, as well as the Dead Sea Scrolls, where the Nag Hammadi, I don't know whether you want to call them gospels or whatever, but it basically described Jesus as saying, don't worship me, become me, which is very consistent with what you just described. It's not a God outside us. It's a God within us, which I think is very much aligned with what you were just talking about. And I think you bring up a very good point about moving away from fear, because religion, especially the traditional religious teachings, are very much based in fear. And that's actually a lower vibration, is it not?
Yes, absolutely.
You're actually going backwards, you're not going forwards. But what you're talking about here with the new earth and with ascension and moving from this dimension to the next or the fifth or whatever it is moving in the right direction. It's progress, in other words.
Well, it's moving forward. We don't ever go back. You can't unvibrate. You can't unexperience something in your vibration.
Oh, I don't know. I live in South Florida, and I think a lot of people are going backward.
I don't know.
I'm not going to go on a rant here, but it just seems like, to me, that whole scene, with some of these extremist type people, politicians, we're going backwards, consciousness wise. Could be. I don't think it's as much as a shift as it was like when it's described how Atlantis changed, and according to some people, it fell because of a massive shift in consciousness. I don't think we're seeing that now. I think, if anything, another thing I wanted to bring up is that people will often, when they talk about ascension and moving from 3 to 5D, they're also talking about shifting from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age. It doesn't apply to everyone, but does that make sense with what you're describing here?
I don't know, because everybody uses different terminology. We're interested in the evolution of humanity. And I would say that every shift in consciousness is a big one. Sometimes, when we're in the third dimension and we shift our consciousness, we're still in the third dimension, but it is a shift. This shift into the fifth dimension is definitely a big one because we will experience the new earth with no fear. And that is, Joseph always says, we know you describe it as big, but for us, it is a choice. And so there's no big or small in that space. It's a choice. And it will be a new experience because we will be physical, but we will not be in these bodies because our bodies are a physical manifestation of our vibration. And so we won't have the denseness. So we will look different.
All right. So if we don't have the denseness, that means we're going to be a little bit further up, the light being totem pole, which means maybe we won't be light beings, but maybe we'll be translucent or something.
I picture it that way because a lot of my friends are very interested in going back and who they were in Atlantis and all this stuff. I know I'm a Lemurian transplant, and I took a trip, a vibrational trip into Telos. And what I saw there were translucent beings. But I have to question too, that were they showing me themselves translucent because I wouldn't be able to see them otherwise? I don't know. I guess I'll see when I get there.
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that. I'm not sure whether you're reading my mind, but I was just thinking about someone who remembers lifetimes from that far back. And so I did ask, okay, great. What did the furniture look like? What did the people look like?
I can tell you.
Really? Okay. Well, okay. Tell me what you saw now. See if it's pretty close to what she told me.
Well, my experience going into the mountain, Mount Shasta, first of all, gorgeous place, but it was the most beautiful experience I ever had. It was new earth. It was what I would say maybe a stopover to the new earth. I don't know. It was a beautiful, beautiful place, but they were huge. I never saw the top of any building, and everything was like one big building, and it was all crystal. The table I sat at was a huge ruby table. It was just the most gorgeous. Everything was gorgeous, but colors that we don't have here, and everything was made out of natural, stone and marble and gold, and just beautiful gardens of just how you would kind of visualize the new earth, maybe, but all natural crystals and just a vibration of pure love. Just beautiful, beautiful.
What did the people look like?
They were very tall, very thin, and beautiful. Beautiful. I have an aspect there who I met for the first time there. I know it sounds weird, and a lot of this stuff sounded weird to me. If I hadn't experienced it, I probably, would kind of shake my head. But my aspect there is Katrina, and she is gorgeous, long, straight, dark hair, big eyes, big blue eyes, just beautiful. And just, they don't, when they're speaking to you, it's vibrational. It's all vibrational. So their mouths aren't moving. It's a vibrational exchange, which is the vibrational language that we talk about. So because you don't need to speak, because it's what some people refer to as telepathy, it's really vibrational exchange.
I've heard that too. Same thing. So they weren't translucent beings, or were they?
Yes, they were, but visible, very visible, but very, I want to say clean. Everything about them was just light. It was just light. I mean, I don't remember what she was wearing, but they were wearing clothes, just beautiful, just a beautiful being, just almost sparkled, just so much light, just beautiful. I can't even describe it, I guess.
Do you think that we could eventually go back to the way it was back in that time, which is probably about 50,000 years ago, if not more, from what I'm told?
Oh, it's much longer ago than that. We can't fathom the length time. I've been here more than 75,000 times. I know that. So it's a lot. Our science will catch up at one point, but we're not going back anywhere. We are creating this. We are creating the new space. We will have a new aspect. We will be a new aspect. And we are creating this new earth in its physical form now. And it will be what we will all experience it the way we visualize it, because there'll be no resistance. Everything is there's no limitation there. It's all unlimited. So you experience what you choose with no fear. If you can wrap your head around that one.
That can't get here soon enough. Cindy, thanks so much for joining us today. How can our listeners find you online?
Website is The Teachings of Josef, with an F at the end, JOSEF.com. I'm on Instagram at The Teachings of Josef. My YouTube channel is The Teachings of Josef. You can find me just about anywhere.
Good. Excellent. I will put that link in the show notes and the transcript as well. You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. For more info, go to closertovenus.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.